Welcome to Binge on Self-Love podcast. I'm your host Anna, but you can call me Anchi. For the past few years, I've been struggling with binge eating disorder, severe procrastination issues, and a really poor self-image. Any kind of self-love has been pretty much non-existent. But I've realized I'm not alone in this, as millions of others struggle with accepting who they are, and we all fight our inner battles. I'm not an expert on this, nor I claim to be, but I have a story and I want to share it with you guys, raw and honest, with all its highs and lows. Every Tuesday, I share my experience, thoughts, and tips on overcoming binge eating disorder, procrastination, and tips on gaining self-love and respect. Join me and our listeners on our journey to build a healthier and kinder relationship with ourselves. Make sure to subscribe to Binge on Self-Love podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss any future episode. For more content on binge eating, procrastination, self-love, and self-acceptance, visit bingeonselflove.com and follow me on Instagram at bingeonselflove. Disclaimer: Binge on Self-Love podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It doesn't provide professional medical advice, and it is not a substitute for a diagnosis or treatment. Enchanté. This episode is probably going to be all over the place because that's how my mind's been for a few weeks now. So if you end up listening to this episode until the end and I still don't seem to make a point by then, I apologize for stealing out 20 or 30 minutes of your time. Hello everyone, my name is Anna, but you can call me Anchi, and welcome to the Binge on Self-Love podcast. Thank you for stopping by and for tuning in. I hope you are having a wonderful week so far. I'm not gonna do any super long intro today, and I'll skip right into what today's episode is going to be about. This episode is going to be a little different, and that's because there's been some things on my mind that I've been thinking about for the past few weeks, and I thought I would share them with you, talk about them, and have some sort of conversation, although it is more like a one-sided conversation. But you can let me know anytime what you think. What is your opinion on the things that I say or on the things that I talk about? Do you agree with them? Do you not agree with them? Do you have a similar experience? Do you not have a similar experience? I'm always keen to hear your feedback. So feel free to DM me on Instagram at bingeonselflove or shoot me an email at anci@bingeonselflove.com. Anyway, I just want to say that this episode will be a contemplation and a reflection on a few different points rather than an episode dedicated to a specific topic. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Enchanté. The first thing on my mind is that I've noticed how my thoughts have changed in the past 2 or 3 weeks. I've noticed I started to think about food way more, but not in a positive way, like what new recipes should I try or what am I going to have for dinner, but in the kind of obsessive way. I've been eating all these random things, even though I'm full or even though I just had a dessert and everything that I've been craving, I still go and I eat something more till the point where I feel physically uncomfortable. And I honestly think that I've been eating like that because I've been feeling a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and I also feel very, very overwhelmed. To give you some kind of context, there are some things that will hopefully change very, very soon, and I'm super excited about them. But at the same time, I am very scared. No, honestly, I'm terrified. I'm not scared, I'm terrified. And I find it a bit hard to adapt to new changes, even though the changes will hopefully be positive ones. I've always been like that. I was always very difficult to deal with any kind of change. And since these changes are something that I've decided I wanted to make, and I am the one who makes them, and it makes me even more anxious and it makes me even more stressed, and I doubt myself a lot, and I have all these different thoughts running through my mind, like, what if I fail? What if I won't be happy? What if this change sucks? What if I won't be able to do what I am thinking that I will be able to do? And all these kind of stuff. And this is definitely not meant as an excuse, but rather what I think has been the trigger for me that I started to search for comfort and for some kind of like safety net and for an escape in food again. As some of you probably know, based on this podcast, I've struggled with binge eating disorder for many, many years, so this kind of behavior is not exactly anything new, but I've been in recovery for the past 3 years, and I had, I would say, a few slip-ups, but I've been doing really, really good for almost the past year. I think I can quite safely say that I haven't binged for the past year. I've definitely ate way more than I wanted at some points, but it was never related to any kind of binge eating behavior. So I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty surprised by my behavior and my thoughts for the past few weeks, and it scared me, to be honest, because I started to feel pretty comfortable with me and with my relationship to food. But the more I think about it, it has probably nothing to do with feeling confident, because there are going to be challenges and tough moments along the way, whatever your journey is, whether you are currently in recovery, whether you have recovered, or even if you didn't have any experience with eating disorder, there are going to be challenges and tough moments along the way. You're gonna overcome many of them, but sometimes the old behavior may creep in a little bit. I had the binge eating urges come back many times throughout my recovery journey, but mostly it has been the thoughts that were associated with binge eating, like, you already had a piece of chocolate, so it doesn't matter if you have the entire chocolate. Why not? You already screwed up, you already messed up, you already ate too much, so how does it matter if you eat just the entire thing? And all these kind of thoughts. And I think I've been pretty good at navigating those thoughts. And although I've been in the recovery for so long, I still have these thoughts sometimes. And most of the time, I would say I don't pay much attention to them, if any. They just come and go, and I do not react to them whatsoever. But sometimes they are just too strong not to notice them, which is what I think has happened during the past few weeks. Please don't take this as any sort of advice on how the recovery should or shouldn't look like. I'm just simply sharing with you my experience, and just because I have these thoughts and I have these urges from time to time, it doesn't mean that it's going to be like that for you, or that it should be or shouldn't be like that for you. Each and everyone's recovery journey is completely different, and yours will be different from mine, and that's okay. So please remember that, and do not compare your journey or yourself to anybody else. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that there's nothing ever perfect. And even though I've made a huge amount of progress when it comes to binge eating disorder and self-acceptance and my kind of relationship to myself and all that, it still hits me from time to time, and it just hit me really hard the past few weeks, I think, because all of the stress, because all of the things that have been going on and all of the emotions I've had, and I didn't really know how to deal with them. And I guess instead of dealing with them, I searched for an easy way out, which for me was and has always been either binge eating or procrastination. Binge eating has always been a way for me how to postpone any kind of stress, any kind of emotion, any kind of responsibility for my life. So I guess I shouldn't be that surprised that that I leaned back to my old behavior in some ways. But at the same time, I think that just realizing that this is how you feel, this is what you've been experiencing, admitting yourself that this is what happened, and this is how you felt, and this is how you dealt with it, is going to help me to prepare myself better for the next time, I hope. I honestly sometimes tend to forget that everything is a constant process, and you try, you learn, you succeed, you fail, you screw up, but then you learn again, and it's all about progress, not perfection, right? Another thing that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and point number 2 that I would like to mention today, is balance, and why does it seem so hard to find balance sometimes? Balance is something that we hear about all the time. Find your balance, have a balanced diet, have a work-life balance, find a balance between things you need to do and things you enjoy, have a balanced relationship. And I myself have mentioned many times in this podcast how important it is to find some sort of balance in all aspects of our lives. Yet sometimes I struggle to find it. I'm gonna be completely honest. Sometimes I feel like my life is full of extremes, and I'm not gonna lie, it is pretty exhausting. I need to say that I'm not talking about like extremes. Most of the extremes that happen in my life happen because of my own fault, because of procrastination, because of not dealing with emotions the way that I probably should, because of not doing things that should be done at the time when they should be done. So what I'm talking about are not like the extremes, but more about things being either one way, which means things being perfectly fine, and then having things the other way, which means things being completely terrible. There are days when I feel super positive about myself, when I feel good in my own skin, when I feel pretty and confident and comfortable with who I am. And then there are days when I feel really bad about myself. There are days when I manage to work out and I feel amazing afterward, and I really try to pay attention to what I eat in terms of nutrition, trying something new, having a variety of food. I need to mention that not in terms of calories or restricting or anything like that, just to clarify. And then there are days when I couldn't be bothered to roll out of my bed early and work out, and I just eat whatever and whenever. Similarly, there are days when I'm able to do almost every single thing that's on my checklist, whereas other days, which unfortunately prevails distinctively, I am searching for all the reasons why not to do something. And I doubt about every single decision I make, and I usually don't really see a point in doing anything but the bare minimum of doing more than what's really necessary. I'm gonna be honest again, I find it a bit frustrating, a lot frustrating to be honest, when I can't seem to find balance between all those things. Maybe it is just my problem, maybe you experience this too, I don't really know. But sometimes I'm like, I would much rather have more linear progress, and I would like things to be a little more stable than have these like random bursts of energy and motivation, and then have these periods when I'm like, I don't really care about anything. I mean, it's cool if you feel very determined to do something and you spend a whole day working on something that you really love and that you are passionate about. But in the long term, I think it's more beneficial to have some sort of balance in everything. It's like with exercise, it's way more beneficial to work out less, but work out consistently, like a couple of times a week, rather than have these periods of times when you feel super motivated and determined, so you end up working like almost every single day, and then you quit like 2 weeks later. And this is the kind of balance that I'm speaking about, and the kind of balance that I'm currently searching for or have been searching for the past few years. And I would much rather do things consistently with rather slow progress, with fewer results, but knowing that each and every time I do something, I'm contributing to my bigger goal, if that makes any kind of sense. I don't know, maybe the thing is that I've learned to pay so much attention to the extremes that I no longer pay attention to anything in the middle. Maybe it's that I don't even notice when I feel fine, because I only focus on the moments when I either feel really good or really bad. As I said at the very beginning, this episode is probably going to sound pretty confusing. And now I think I'm pretty sure that this episode is going to be helpful rather to me than to you, because I am sorting out my thoughts as I speak. Point number 3 I want to talk about is procrastination and taking responsibility for your decision and over your actions. If you've listened to any of the previous episodes, you know I do have issues with procrastination. Pretty serious issues, I would say. I, in general, believe that procrastination is an issue that we should take more seriously, because the moment it starts to interfere with your life to the point it affects your dreams, your dream life, your future, that's when, in my opinion, procrastination stops being just something that everybody does sometimes, and it turns into a problem. I do take my procrastination issues seriously because it affects me so much. And I do get angry with myself for that a lot, because I know I could do more and I should do more. And part of the reason why I feel unhappy with where I am in life is because I know I am capable of doing much more if I wasn't procrastinating. And I'm not talking about anything crazy. I'm not talking about working more and more and more. I'm talking about using the time that I have effectively, and I'm talking about doing things when they should be done, not postponing them to the very last minute. I'm able to spend hours watching YouTube, or I spend my time scrolling through Instagram, browsing through online clothing store, and stuff like that. And it's such a waste of time. And I do that to avoid any kind of discomfort of pushing myself and doing something that I've always dreamed about. And it sounds so bad and a lot of people say that if you don't make yourself do it, you probably don't want it enough. But I don't really believe in that. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is procrastination, and the problem is that I simply can't find a way how to deal with it, I guess. What I've also noticed, and what I honestly hate about myself, is that very often I do put myself in a position of being a victim of procrastination. And I put myself into a position of blaming other people and other things for where I am in life and for feeling unhappy in certain areas of my life. To me, and I believe to many of you as well, procrastination is about avoiding responsibilities. And it's no different with taking responsibility for where my life is heading because of procrastination, because of me procrastinating. And what's the most frustrating thing, in my opinion, is that I know I am the only one standing in my way, and taking responsibility for your actions or your inactions is hard. This is definitely something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because there are some major changes happening in my life, changes that I've decided to make, changes that only I take full responsibility for. But I've also noticed that the more real the changes got and the closer they got, my mind was like, hell no, freaking out, searching for ways how to get myself out of it. And how I usually deal or have dealt with situations like this is either through procrastination or by binge eating. Sometimes I really wish that if I could change just one thing about myself, it wouldn't be anything related to my appearance, anything about my character. I would accept all that, but the one thing that I would love to change about myself would be my terrible procrastination habit, or whatever that is. The last point I would like to talk about today is how important it is to keep as much positive attitude as possible when things go south. It sounds like an obvious thing, but it's not so obvious, or it hasn't been that obvious for me for a very long time. And I'm honestly not exactly the right person you would go for encouragement when things don't go according to plan. Usually, when one thing goes wrong, maybe not like even necessarily wrong, but just not according to plan or as expected, I automatically turn into a freak mode, and I'm like, see, I knew this was gonna happen. I'm not good enough. I could never do this. And it takes me a lot of time and a lot of thinking to realize like, maybe it's not all that bad. Maybe there is still something that I can do. Maybe there is a way how to solve it. And even if there's no way how to fix it, it's not the end of the world. In the movies, I would be the one person screaming, "We're all gonna die here," while everyone else would be trying to find a way how to get out of that situation. And I'm not really proud of myself for having this kind of freak out like reaction, which I guess is pretty obvious. But what essentially brought me to this idea of staying positive in tough situations was the current pandemic situation. First and foremost, I don't want to complain at all. There are millions and millions of people who were affected by the pandemic way worse than I was. So I don't want to, and I will not complain at all. What I'm talking about is more of the mental side of things, I guess. We've been in a lockdown for so long, for over a year now, and the country I live in is doing so bad compared to other countries. And there doesn't really seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel. And it got me feeling very frustrated lately. It got me thinking like, when this is gonna end? We've been living like this for over a year now. What's gonna happen next and stuff like that. And I guess I just started to feel really negative in other aspects of my life as well. But the more I started to think about it, and the more I was like, so I'm feeling all this negativity because of something that I can't even control, I realized like, how is this attitude gonna help me? How is this gonna make me feel better? How is this gonna help me to do anything that's going to be good for anything, for me, for anybody else? How is this gonna help me? And I realized it's not gonna help me. And I can either choose to remain in the negativity and be even more and more negative about everything, or I can try to search for something at least a little positive in all of this. So I try to come up with all these different kinds of things that I can do to make the best out of the worst, take the time to learn something new, to try something new, take this time to work on things that I otherwise wouldn't have time, and prepare myself for hopefully the better times in terms of like preparing more episodes for the podcast, preparing more blog posts and stuff like that. So the past few weeks definitely got me thinking a lot more, how can I turn the negativity into some sort of positive outcome? So that's all I have for today's episode. I know this episode has been a different one and it's been all over the place. So thank you so much for taking your time and for listening to me rambling about all these different kinds of topics and for not making much sense. But I honestly find this really helpful to just sort out my thoughts and share what I'm going through with some of you out there. I'll be back next Tuesday with another episode, so make sure to subscribe to Binge on Self-Love podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts so you don't miss any future episodes. And make sure to follow me on Instagram at Binge on Self-Love. Thank you for tuning in and talk to you soon. Bye! Thank you so much for spending your time listening to Binge on Self-Love podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe to Binge on Self-Love podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss any future episode. You can find more content on binge eating, procrastination, and self-acceptance at bingeonselflove.com and on Instagram at bingeonselflove. Talk to you soon. Bye!